Hello and welcome to Geekatplay tutorials. In this tutorial, we're going to create an undersea environment in Vue. We'll create some custom rocks and other custom objects, and we'll work on some textures as well. In fact, that is where we're starting. We'll be creating our textures first in Photoshop. If you don't have Adobe Photoshop, you can probably use Painter.net or Blender. That software is free, and we have some links to them from our website. If you don't want to create these, we'll also have a package ready for this tutorial on our website. You can download them for free the first week when we release our tutorial, and they'll probably be about 75 cents after. So we'll create first our terrain. Yeah, even here in Photoshop. But we need to change these dimensions to 1024 by 1024. And first, we'll go to the filter and click on Render, Clouds, and then filter again, Render, and go to Different Clouds. And now we just need to press Ctrl F a couple of times until we get the look we want. I think that's just right there. So this will be our rock base. Next, let's create a new layer, and we'll just fill up this layer with any color. Black is fine. And now we'll go to our layer and double click, and this will open up our layer style. We'll go to Pattern Overlay, and right here we will select one of these here. I think I'll go with this one. And if you don't have it in your patterns, these probably come default with the Photoshop program you have. You just need to go here and load patterns. And I think it's texture too. We'll select that one now. And we can make the scale bigger or smaller, but let's just make it 100% for now. And this is what that will look like. Now we'll go to this effect symbol, right-click with your mouse, and select Create Layers. Let's select both of these layers. We'll merge now the layers. Now let's go to Normal and change this to Screen. And this will kind of overlay it. You can, if you want, reduce it slightly, make it a little bit more grayish, or more texture will pop up. And that is our first texture. So let's go and save this. And we'll go to File, Save for Web and Devices, and we'll select JPEG and set the resolution to very high. You can select it higher or lower depending on what resolution you want and how much memory you have to work with. And we'll save this as Rock 1. And this is our first texture. And now let's create a new one with the same width and height here, 1024 by 1024. And this is our second texture. And we'll go to Filter, Render, Clouds, and now again Different Clouds. Press Control F a few times again until we like what we're seeing. And I think this looks pretty nice. And this is going to be our ground here. And the next filter we'll use is plastic wrap. And with the plastic wrap, we probably want to decrease the highlight strength a bit. And maybe down here we'll increase the details and the smoothness as well. So this is our other texture. File, Save, and this one is our Rock 2. And now let's create another one. File, New. And this will be the last texture that we're making, and this one's going to be a little bit more complicated for us to do. And first we'll unlock this background here. so that we can apply the next filter we're going to use. And we'll go to noise and add noise there. And let's make the amount here a little bit larger. And this will be our base. So let's create a new layer. And in the new layer, let's just fill it up with a gray color. And reset your colors now to black and white. And then we'll go to filter and texture and use the stained glass. Here, let's make sure our light intensity is set to 0, our border thickness to 1, and our cell size works here now at about 18. So there's that step. And now we'll take our smudge tool and we'll set the brush to 25 and the mode to darken, and the strength will be around 33. And then we'll just sweep it along here back and forth. And this will take a little time, and maybe we can do it a bit faster. And we also went up and down. And now a few finishing touches here, and this will be our next layer. So let's create another layer, and we'll do the same. Gray, reset to black and white, filter, texture, stained glass, and let's make the cell size bigger now. And we want to do pretty much the same thing as before with our smudge tool, but not as much as we did previously. And up and down. And this just adds to the texture. And now we'll make a new layer. Go ahead and do the same thing. Gray, reset, and go bring in our stained glass. And now we'll make the cell size even bigger. But we're not going to do anything else to this one, except for working with the modes here. It's usually normal, and we'll select this one, color burn, or maybe screen, but I think I like color burn. And just see which one is looking how you want, and we'll decrease the fill here. And this gives us a little bit more interesting look. Just play around with the modes in here. And we'll go through and do this with several of the with all of the layers. Just get an idea what using these modes can do for you. All that we need is just like bigger blobs. You can increase the size of them so that they pop up better. You can do that with a few more lines around them. But this here is just about the look that we're going for. So now let's save this. And we'll save this as our Rock 3. Okay, now we're done with Photoshop and we'll be going into our VU program. Now we've opened our VU application, and let's now create our materials here. So we'll start with a sphere. To preview the materials, let's double time click on it to open the material editor. And here it's very easy to set up. So we'll right click, edit function. And well, in the edit function, we'll just move this here, and we can go ahead and delete these nodes, but leave the color map. And what we need is our bump input, and we'll add an image in here, down here to load, and we'll bring in the rock 1 texture that we created before. And now in the color map, we'll just change that by double time clicking, and we'll just use something that is already available to us. Let's see what we have here. And we'll select this natural color. We also want to add another node here. And it will be the same image, and we'll link those together so we have a distribution of color going for us. And if we want, we could add an additional filter here, but for now, this is pretty much what we need. Now, if we go and preview our material, this is what it looks like. It's something spongy with a bit of underwater reflection. And that was exactly what we were going for. You could modify it if you wanted to, but it's okay for now. One nice thing to do while you're creating a scene is you always want to save the materials that you made just for future uses. So let's save this now, and we'll call this material Sponge Rock. Also, you probably want to incorporate texture maps here so you don't lose the reference to the image that you created. So now we'll save this one. Now, we don't need that sphere anymore. We'll delete it and create another sphere, and we'll just create another material here. Double time click edit function, and I'll probably do something very similar to what we did before. We can actually do it this way: edit and add our image map, click rock 2, go right here, image, and attach it to the grayscale output. And we have our image, and we'll use our green, brown, white color, which looks very much of the sea here. We can edit the filter, and with this key point, we'll bring out the white, because the white is going to be more like the sand. So now we have our filter done. And be sure you have it set as object parametric. And another thing to do, let's enable the displacement map for all of them, and that will give us a better texture here. So now I'll save this one as terrain, because this is our seafloor here. One other thing, we can create an entirely new material again, or if we want, we can just edit image since we saved our material before. So we'll just go in here and load our rock 3, go here, and in color, we'll do the same, load rock 3. Click OK. So now we have this kind of coral look. And in colors, we probably want to modify that a little bit. And we'll make it a little more greenish instead. And so now let's save this as Bump Rock. And again, object parametric, and we have our displacement mapping, the other thing that I forgot to go do is enable the displacement mapping in our sponge rock. So, and we'll save that one as well, and we'll go ahead here and overwrite it. Now, actually, if you look right now, it looks really cool in here. It looks like something you would see underwater. Calcium deposits from a coral here. So I think we're ready to build our scene now. So now while we have our sphere up, let's just make it smaller and taller so it's like an oval. We'll place it somewhere here, maybe right here, and let's create our ground now with the terrain. And in this ground, we'll just make it a little bit flatter here. And in effects, let's add some pebbles, erode and diffuse it a little bit. And now we'll just increase the size of this terrain. And if you want, you can even drop it down a little bit here. And in our terrain, we'll apply that material to this that we made. Now we want to decrease the scale of that material just a little bit and make it smaller. So we have our one sphere, and let's create another one. Move it here, and this time we'll select the bump rock. And we'll do the same thing, grow it up tall, change the shape of this sphere, move it around. And then let's go make another one. And let's make this one taller. And I think we'll put it in back behind this one on the left. And we'll make one more. And put it in this grouping here. And now we'll adjust our camera and take a quick look. This is what we have so far. These corals are growing up out of the sandy seafloor. Let's take our first sphere and move it a little closer to the camera so we can see more of the details in here. And I think I want to move this down, make it a bit shorter. We can also slightly increase the bumps here, and same on the other ones. We can slightly increase the scale there too. Now let's finish our background. We'll create a terrain and let's assign the terrain material to this and take a quick preview of it. I think we're almost ready to populate it with plants and water. So let's go in our first one, open, and we'll select our ecosystem and add plants. Looking through the plants, let's select the seaweed. And let's increase this density a little bit so it looks nice. There. Like that. And now let's do the same thing for the other corals. If you want, you can populate this, you could create your materials already predefined with the ecosystem, and it may save some time, but I like to do it this way so that I can manage the way that these plants populate the area. Ecosystem, add the plant, increase the density, and our last one, the tallest one, ecosystem, plant, increase density, and we'll add even a little more on this one. So now we'll do the same for the terrain, but instead of just our seaweed, we'll also add an anemone. And let's increase the presence of this. And we want to disable decay near foreign objects, so these plants will really flourish all over the seafloor. And in our background, we'll do pretty much the same thing. You know, if you want, we don't need to populate it that much in the background because it will be far away and most likely you really won't even be able to see the plants that are there. Okay, this is our scene done now without any water or anything else. So let's take a look at it. And so now the scenery is looking both familiar and alien. It's nothing that we'd see on land. But now if we add some water, we'll see it come into its own. Water is not something that we can do with atmospheres or in a layer. We need to simulate it. So let's create a cube. A very big cube that's going to enclose this whole scene. And we'll move it closer now to the camera. And let's change this to a liquid. Tropical water is fine. One cool thing, if you add it in front of the camera, you will have these interesting distortions. But if you put the camera inside the cube, the distortions disappear, but then you get more depth. So now we also need to go into this transparency tab and reduce our murkiness so the water is a little cleaner in here. Also, when we have the water here, let's add in our lighting now. We'll go to light. We'll create a spotlight and adjust it a little bit here. Just so it's pointing right at our corals. And we'll enable the volumetric. And then we want to add a light gel to this. And let's use the spots gel because they will show a little bit better in this case right here. And also let's enable smoke. And then we'll decrease this power down to 70, maybe even 50 or 60. And because the light has changed color, let's edit the color and maybe give it a more greenish kind of a hue to enhance that underwater look. Also in our water material, we can change the absorption color and some other things so we can remove that yellowish hue. Now let's go into our atmosphere editor and we want to move this all the way over to the ambient light so it's very even and make this a little bit darker. Shadows, reduce the sun, and make it even darker here. So the light is coming from the top and dissipating towards the bottom. Remove all the clouds, decrease the sky density. And we're okay now. But still, you see that it's a little bit darker right here. So we'll take our spotlight and move it up a little bit so it spreads around better. And we'll go create just a light. And we'll put this light behind here. And it will add a little more light and increase the depth slightly. And then we'll add another light and we'll put it in front of our objects so it will just highlight them enough for us to see well. Increase the power here. And we'll have our other lights that we've opened here. And one thing you notice that this light isn't doing much because it's inside the cube. So we need to go into the options and we need to go to influences and select only the objects marked below. So we'll go now to mark everything except the cube. So the light will shine on those, and we'll do the same with this light. Use the shadow map. Go into influence and select all except that last one, the cube. So this gives us a bit more lighting to preview this with. We'll maybe increase the softness. So now this is our basic setup. And let's do a quick render to see what we have. So now this is looking nice and watery with enough light that we'll be able to see some of our fishies that we'll bring into the picture to make this alive. And notice the details in the texture. It's high resolution. You'll see a lot more if you bring it in closer, which is nice about custom textures. So now we're going to bring in our life. Here are these aquatic objects and these fish that come with view, and we'll just bring it in here and put them around. Make the size right. And then we'll add someone else into here. A scalar fish. And we'll move him down into our scene here. A little closer to the camera. Then let's select them both. And we'll duplicate them. We'll just move them around. Also, we could use replication to add a few more in here. You know what? Let's go in and add an angelfish. I like those a lot. And we'll bring that angelfish a little bit closer to us so we can kind of compare it with something in the background. Zoom in a little bit. And we'll just move him here a little bit closer to us now. So he's just right in front of us. Let's add another object, and we'll bring in our whale now, the orca. And we're just going to put him here in the back. And of course we'll make him bigger. He's back there, but he's still the star of the picture. But now we're going to give him a co-star. With the Alt click, we did that, and we're just making them friends here. But I think they're too far back there. So let's look at that. They've disappeared into the background, so let's bring them closer here. You know, let's move them almost right under the light. And a little bit over. Yeah, that's about where I want them there. And now let's render this into high resolution so that we can get a good look at what we've got. So now here's our full underwater scene with the custom textures that we started out with in Photoshop. Our coral reefs here. You can add more objects, rocks, change the shapes of the reef if you want, make it messier, bumpier looking. You know, life is messy. Some of this terrain, you can see some distortion, so we need to decrease the bump map a little on that one. And the water we did with that cube. And we increase the depth there, and maybe we need to remove some of that light here so it's not so homogeneous and even through here, and have just a few spots of light with the rest of it dark and murky like the depths of the sea. So we'll go to the terrain, right click on our terrain, and we'll set the bumps on that. And we'll set them down to 0. Now let's go to our spotlight. And maybe decrease it so it's just something that's in the back. And we'll go to our sphere. You know, and again, if you just hold down Alt while we move it, it will create another one. And we'll just go around and create several of them in here, and we'll scatter them around. And we'll just be adding some more details into this, embellishing this picture, the story of a coral reef. And let's add something else in front here. So we'll open our objects and we'll select the seaweed, and we'll just move it closer to the camera. And we'll put it right up here in front. Even in front of this cube. And it's just behind our fish. There we go. So it gives us a little bit more dimension into the picture. And another one. And one more. So the one interesting thing about creating all this is you can just spend hours and hours on the positioning and on the adding, making it just how you like it. And you can make this your scene and create it in the way that you have in your imagination. So we're done here, and let's see how this render turns out. Okay, and here is our final image. Of course, we could add more, but this seems a good place to call it finished. One thing that is nice about custom textures, materials that we just created, we can bring them very close up and they still look excellent. And you can find a lot more uses for these textures that you've made now. Thank you for watching this tutorial from Geekatplay Studio. If you have more questions, need more resources, want to see more tutorials, or would like to add your input, please visit us at www.geekatplay.com or www.vututorials.com.